Okay. Okay, and we can get started now. Okay.
Aloha, everyone, and thank you for your interest in learning about the Marshallese culture. Just want to welcome you. Today's agenda, we're going to be talking about the geography of where the Marshall Islands are, a little bit of history of our country and our political ties to the United States, and some cultural insights and experiences. My name is Della Nakamoto. I am a Marshallese. I'm a mother of 3. I was born and raised in the Marshall Islands. And I've lived here. I think I moved here when I was 17. I moved here when I was 17. I know that, yes. And I kind of came here with no background of where I was going. I moved to California, and I sort of figured out how to navigate, learning the new culture and learning how to adapt. So I'm a Maui native now. I live here. I've been here 25 years, and so I'm excited to share my culture with every one of you. And yeah, Kathleen, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Della. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to this presentation. My name is Kathleen Jonathan, and I am Native Marshallese, born and raised. I lived in Hilo for 6 years before moving to Oregon, and I am coming to you in the Zoom space from Oregon, Salem, Oregon, to be exact. I am the eldest granddaughter, both my parents' side. I am the eldest daughter of my parents. I have 3 siblings, same parents, 3 half siblings on my dad's side, 3 half siblings on my mother's side. I'm a mother of 3 grown men, and I'm a grandmother to 1 handsome young man. He just turned 1 in August. Thank you for being here.
Okay. Next slide, please, Kelsey. So the Marshall Islands is located in Micronesia. And Micronesia is one of 3 distinct subregions of the Pacific, or Oceania. The other 2 subregions are Polynesia and Melanesia. And these 3 regions consist of a vast number of islands and are home to a variety of people. The key difference between the regions stems from the diversity of the people and their culture. So here's just a list of some of the islands that are in these 3 subregions. In Polynesia, you have Hawaii, Cook Islands, Samoa, Tonga, New Zealand, French Polynesia. And then in Melanesia, you have Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Fiji, New Caledonia. And then in Micronesia, you have the Marshall Islands, Guam, Saipan, Palau, and the Federated States of Micronesia, which makes up 4 countries: Chuuk, Kosrae, Pohnpei, and Yap. Next slide, please, Kelsey. The Marshall Islands are not that far. They're 2,387 miles by airplane to Hawaii, and it's about a 4.5 to 5 hour flight direct from Honolulu, and they're 19 hours ahead of the U.S. And the Marshall Islands consist of 29 atolls. The 29 atolls are divided by 2 chains of islands that are almost parallel to each other. The Radak chain, which is translated as the sunrise chain, and then the Ralik chain, which is the sunset chain. And we're going to get into those later on in this presentation. Next slide, please. So there is a difference between an atoll. So the Marshall Islands are atolls. There's a difference between an atoll and an island. An atoll is created as coral reef builds up around the mouth of an eroding volcanic island. Over time, life evolves on land and around the mouth or on the lagoon and ocean side of the sunken volcano. This island you see here, this atoll you see here is Bikini Atoll. And I'm sure some of you are familiar with Bikini Atoll. And we're going to get into the history of Bikini Atoll and what happened there. Next slide, please. So in 3D, here's what an atoll looks like. When the tide is low, this photo at the top right is you can walk between the islands, between the atolls. And, it's really pretty. This is where we pick shells. We get to catch little fish for our fish bowls. And however, when the tide is high, it can be dangerous. Some people have died, being swept away by the current. So don't let this pretty little, this little pretty island fool you, because it can be dangerous. And so, and this the atoll, this Madro Atoll, which is my background photo, is this is the main capital of the Marshall Islands, and this is where you fly in from Honolulu direct to the Marshall Islands. Next slide, please. So the Marshall Islands has, as I mentioned before, it has two chains, the Sunrise and the Sunset chain, and 9 of the atolls and islands are uninhabitable. 5 of them are islands. And I'm not going to go into the names because, I don't want to go over all of these names, but I'm going to now turn it over to Kathleen, and she can talk about the history.
Thank you, Della. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the history of the Marshall Islands, we were just minding our business. But if you go further back, the Spaniards and the Portuguese were deciding who gets what, like west of the meridian, east of the meridian. And then, but we were discovered, according to history, by British Naval Captain William Marshall. And then we were, between Spain and Portugal, I guess we fell under Spain's ownership, and then were sold to, next slide, please. Then, we were captured after World War I, we were under the Japanese rule. Then after World War II, we were under the US government, and that's when we were known as the Federated States of Micronesia. So Palau, the Marshall Islands, were also part of the Federated States of Micronesia. Next slide, please. I'm not going to really cover that part of history because there's a lot. I had to delete some of the slides here. And right after World War II, the United States military decided to test their atomic weapons in the Marshall Islands on Bikini Atoll, to be exact. And this was when, I think it was during the Cold War, where Russia and the United States were trying to come up with atomic weapons. And this is, it was called Pacific, it's Operation Crossroads. So this is one of the bombs that was tested on the lagoon of Bikini Atoll, which was shown in the previous slides. You can see these black dots in the background. These are actual ships. And so they were put on here to test how effective the atomic bomb was underwater. Next slide, please. And this is the famous Wilson Cloud. And by the way, these photos, they're on the internet. I don't take credit for any of them, but using them for visual so you can see what that was like during when they tested the atomic bombs on Bikini Atoll. Again, you can see like it looks like it's busy in the background. Those are ships. And you can see some of them, I think they're in the, what do you call that? In the explosion. And this is the famous Wilson Cloud from the Crossroads Baker. There were over 60 atomic bombs that were tested on the island, and it was between Bikini Atoll and Eniwetok Atoll. We will go back to that slide with the map of the two parallel island chains. Next slide, please. And by the way, the people were evacuated before they tested the atomic bombs on the island. So it was only the military personnel that were on that atoll when they did the testing. But mind you, that the military personnel back then, they also didn't know what they were dealing with when they were testing these bombs. And so some of the videos, when I did this research, you can see like after the fallout, the military personnel were walking, with the fallout, and you can see dust rising, but they weren't wearing any protective gear. And you can see the dust from the fallout just, being stirred as they were walking after they tested some of the bombs. This is Ivy Mike, another atomic bomb that was tested on Eniwetok Atoll. And I'll also show in later slides of Eniwetok. So this is the first hydrogen bomb that was tested on this atoll. Next slide, please. The slides I'm showing, the clouds went above the clouds. So these must have been military photos that were shared later, but it was really hard to get these information from the internet. Like when I was in school and doing a paper on the radio effects of the atomic bombs in the islands. So this is it's another bomb that was tested called Castle Bravo. This was the most powerful hydrogen bomb ever tested on Bikini Atoll. Next slide, please. So you wonder, like over 60 atomic bombs were tested. Where did the garbage go? This is where all the radiation garbage went. They dug up one of the coral islets on Eniwetok Atoll and buried them in this cement. You can see black dots on the dome. Those are actual people walking on the dome. This is all the radiation debris from back when they did the testing on Bikini Atoll and Eniwetok Atoll. They're still there to this day. And Bikini Atoll was off limits to the natives. It was only open for scientists. We would hear of people coming in to test the radiation over the years after they closed the program. And it wasn't open until 1997 for tourists. But Bikini Atoll is still uninhabited to this day. And the people had been relocated a few times, and finally they were settled on Kili Island. And I'll also show you where that is in the map of the Marshall Islands. Eniwetok, on the other hand, people were relocated to Wujilang Atoll, which is close by. But the people of Eniwetok were allowed to go back to their atoll. So there are people still living on Eniwetok with this dome in one of the small islets of that atoll. People are, some of the people that were relocated to Wujilang Atoll are still on Wujilang, but some of them returned to Eniwetok. Next slide, please. So here's a map again of the two parallel chains, product chain. which is, sunrise chain, and Ralik chain, which is sunset chain. If you look towards the south bottom, you'll see tiny, tiny Kili Island, Kila. It's almost to the end of the map. It's above Ebon. So there's Kili, and Bikini Atoll is way up to the north, right below the S in Marshall Islands. So it's the farthest north. It's an atoll. Compared to Kili, it's a tiny island. And that's where the people, on an atoll, you can go from islet to islet to look for food. But on an island, you can't. It's just one, just like Hawaii with like a one piece of land in the middle of the ocean. Whereas an atoll, it's different. You can live on an islet and then go to the other islets to look for food. And Wujilang and Aniwetak are to the far left of the Marshall Islands map. And so that's where they tested the atomic bombs on Aniwetak and mainly on Bikini Atoll. But the debris, the garbage, they're stored on Aniwetak Atoll. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, sorry, can you go back, Kelsey? Thank you. If you look to the middle of the map, there's Kwajalein Atoll. That's where the US military base is located. They've been there since, I think that was their new post after the war. And so they also test like missiles here. But in one of, Kwajalein has the largest, you can see it's the largest atoll. And then one of the islets is where the military base is. They took the people and put them in small Ibai where it's congested. It's a smaller islet than Kwajalein. Next slide, please. So because of the testings that the US military base did, US military did, the Marshall Islands government and the United States government came together and formed what's called the Compact of Free Association, which all of these is what's pretty much, I mean, it's a long, thick treaty, but these are the main things that the United States government and the Marshallese government have agreed. So it extends US domestic programs and federal services, provides direct US economic assistance, and it was renewed in June of 2004 for another 20 years, which, 2024 is coming. It's just around the corner. That's when the compact ends. And, negotiations, I don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen, but it is up for revisit in 2024. When students are filling out the FAFSA, a lot of times, and I had forgotten to mention, I work with the Salem-Keizer Public Schools in Salem, Oregon, and it enrolls the second largest student population of Marshallese. Chukis is the third largest. And when students are filling out the FAFSA, in prior years, they would get denied because the counselors or staff that were working in the school district didn't know what their status was, because nobody knew about the Compact of Free Association or our immigration status. So a lot of the times they would put US citizens when they're actually not. It's either US citizens or aliens. And even before, when I was in school, as I had been filling out that FAFSA paper application, there was no immigration status for the people of Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, and Palau. And so this was like you had to have known the history to be able to help a student that is applying for FAFSA. And for employees, their status is non-citizen nationals of USA. Not a lot of people know, not a lot of the Marshallese know about these statuses. You really have to work in, government institutes or schools, not government institutes, sorry, like schools or agencies that are working with people from the Marshall Islands or Federated States of Micronesia or Palau. The compact also establishes U.S. defense rights and obligations in the region, allows for immigration both ways. So a Marshallese citizen can come to the United States with no reason whatsoever, no expiration date. We're not here on a visa. We use our passport is similar to the US passports. We do not need to apply for visa. I already mentioned that. We do not need to apply for employment authorization card. We get here, as soon as we get here, we can apply for a US Social Security number. Same way for a US citizen, you can come to our island for whatever reason, there's no expiration date. So it's a two-way street. And the compact also contains economic, political, strategic provisions. So we receive fundings for college, for education. We have our Ministry of Education receives scholarships, and a Marshallese student, high school graduate, can apply for the FAFSA and apply for the Marshall Islands Scholarship. We also receive other help in terms of finances to the government sectors as well. Next slide, please. So some of the reasons, the main reasons that people have moved from the Marshall Islands to the United States, we're here for educational opportunities in the K-12 system. A lot of our students, especially students that I work with, they come and live with relatives. They don't necessarily come with their parents. And, as a Marshallese, the system is that of an extended family system. So when people ask, like, well, how important is education? It's so important that families will send their kids to live with relatives to get that American education. College is also another opportunity, another reason that Marshallese people move to get an education, because we do not have universities in the Marshall Islands. We only have one community college. The Marshall Islands plus people from the Federal States of Micronesia and Palau, I think at some point there was a report that came out stating that we are like the highest per capita of recruitment from the Gulf Island nations. So that's another reason that Marshallese people come to the United States, is they come and they fight for this country, even though we're not US citizens. But once they return from the battlefield, they can automatically become a US citizen. That's an option that they get to choose. And also people come here to get medical help. The infrastructure back in the islands is not as, compared to the United States. Of course, it's not as strong as it is here. And so a lot of the times, they will send people to the Philippines or to Hawaii or even to the mainland for medical reasons. Sometimes people move out here on their own to seek medical help. And majority of the people that are migrating here are coming out for employment opportunities. I'm not sure if any of you know, but Arkansas has the biggest Marshallese population, and they are the ones operating the Tyson factory, Tyson chicken. If you've bought Tyson chicken in the grocery stores, a lot of the Marshallese are working in the Tyson factory. They're in all of the factories, as you know, when Clinton was president, he made sure that Arkansas had all these big factories so people have jobs. So a lot of them move out to Arkansas because they get jobs easily. And it seems it's very, life there is pretty affordable compared to Hawaii. Next slide, please.
Kathleen, may I add that the minimum wage in the Marshall Islands is $2 an hour?
Yes, thank you for that reminder. And so that's the reason why a lot of people are moving out for employment opportunities, because it is way, way different than it is back home. Of course, you don't pay rent, but you have if you are not, if you don't own land, you can't just go and build land. You have to have permission from the chiefs and the leaders like of that land. The newest reasons for people moving out to the United States is because of climate change. So this photo was from, one moment. This is called, when there's seasons like during winter time, the islands get inundated, especially Madro Atoll, the capital. They get inundated with flooding, and it can, so that you actually see, that's the ocean side you're facing. And this is actually, this is a really high tide, because you don't, you see the trees, that's like a little bit above where, it's on the ground. And so when king tides come, it ruins homes, it ruins the water tide, the fresh water. Because there are still some areas where they use well, and so the sea water just ruins a lot of these resources for families. And so they're more frequent with greater impact. The king tides, they affect the water reservoir and the way of life for the people. This photo was taken in November 19 of 2014 at 3 p.m. And the photo credits to Alson Kalen. I think he's been in some of the Hawaiian islands in the canoe racing. And Della, correct me if I'm mistaken. And I can share where that article was published, and it was also posted in a link. I'm going to drop it in the chat. Am I able to do that, Kelsey? Okay. Sorry. Next slide, please. So because of all those reasons, we're seeing a number of people coming to the United States nonstop every month. There's no season of moving. It's when people can afford to move, they move. And so when they move to the mainland or Hawaii, they don't just up and, okay, we're going to go over there and live. They come because most of them, they have no other, they have no other choice but to come. And when they come, they lose their strong family support system, that extended family. They're faced with unfamiliar language, unfamiliar systems. They're faced with lack of access or no access at all to services. Oftentimes they're being excluded because of systemic barriers, and the cultures don't match. As I'm working with students, you don't look adults in the eye, but in the school system, if you're called to the office and the principal or assistant principal or an adult is talking to you, a lot of the times the kids will look down, look anywhere else except face the adult that is talking to them. So there's a lot of cultural mismatches and misunderstandings that the Marshallese face when they move from their homeland. And culture shock, of course, anybody moving from their comfort zone, their home, to somewhere that is different, you always experience culture shock. Next slide, please. So some of the cultural insights, as I'm working with students, and I'm gonna refer to students because that's the experience that I bring. So when students come, they can come and live with an aunt, an uncle, grandparents. And so some students will come with grandparents, and they come and live with other relatives. So that you have like a multi-generational household. That's the way it is back home. They come here, here there's like 2-bedroom apartments. You can't have more than 4 people in that apartment. And that is probably the maximum number of rooms that families can afford, because they don't have an American education, like college degree, to be able to afford higher, living in a nice neighborhood with more bedrooms. The more bedrooms you have, the more expensive. So a lot of the families, they're in 2-bedroom apartments, but it's a multi-generational family. You have that extended system where parents, grandparents, cousins, whatnot, they're all living together. And the Marshallese culture is that of a matrilineal heritage. So I inherit my land through my mom, and my mom inherits that through her mom. And, for our clan, when your students are graduating back in the islands, identity is so important. So they'll call the student's name, and then they'll call the parents, and then they'll say the student is from this atoll. So that's your lineage. It's through your mom. You inherit everything through your mom, and the only thing you inherit from your dad is his last name. Gender role is very, very defined. At least when I was growing up, but nowadays there's more women in working, helping the families as well. And there's the nonprofit organization that is really helping women to see their role as not just the nurturer, the caretaker, teaching them that they don't belong only in the kitchen or the home. You see more women brave. They're more brave now in reporting abuse. And it's one of those things where people are divided in terms of whether you should be reporting abuse or not, that it should remain in the family. Respect is taught from day one. Again, going back to that eye contact, children are taught to be quiet in the presence of adults. You don't have an opinion. You do not get to choose. I'm the adult. I cook, you eat what I eat. You don't get to choose, and you don't get to say, well, I want this. I want a different variety. Or the Marshallese language is learned orally. We don't learn it like how you learn English structurally in the schools. So, there are events where you get to hear the family tree during funeral, first birthday celebrations, weddings. So you get to hear how is that family connected to me, and it's that extended family. Who you're related to, and there's no such thing as first cousin, second cousin, third cousin. We're all brothers and sisters. And there were few times where at an elementary, a teacher was confused because the kids were like, yeah, that's my sister, that's my brother. And they're in like second grade, first grade. And the teacher's like, oh my gosh, I feel bad for the mom. And come to find out, no, they're not actual brothers and sisters. They're cousins, like first cousins, so close. But we don't have a word for first cousin or the word cousin. Again, making eye contact. And I keep repeating making eye contact because that is, a lot of the years back, I've been in the district for 21 years, and the previous years, students, especially males, would get in so much trouble for being disrespectful. Then I would ask, well, how is the student disrespectful? And it's usually a female teacher and a male student. Of course, the male student is not going to look at the female in the eye when they're talking. And so, they're looking, they don't know where to look, but the teacher is telling the student, look at me when I'm talking to you. And that is, so I would tell the teacher, I said, you know, that's like me, that's like somebody telling you from a different culture, telling you, don't look at me. Because when you look somebody in the eye, at least in this culture, when you don't look them in the eye and talk, you're either lying or hiding something. And so they would always get suspended because of that. Smile can be a sign of embarrassment. I had gone into parent-teacher conferences with a mom who's, you know, had a son, was a little bit naughty. This is middle school, and the teacher was just frustrated with his smart kid. He just, you know, he was an only child, so of course he, you know, got everything he wanted, a little bit on the spoil side. So when I was sitting down with the teacher and the mom, the teacher started talking about, you know, he's doing this, he's not supposed to be doing this, he's not turning in homework. He started with all the negative things. And the mom, during the whole conference, she was just smiling, but she was really embarrassed because culturally, when your child is misbehaving, I remember hearing elders would, you know, if a child is misbehaved, the first thing they ask is, whose child is that? Where's the mom? Who's the family? Because once you step outside of your home, you represent your family. So it is embarrassing when teachers are reporting about the behaviors that are, you know, frowned upon in the school district. They're reporting the behaviors to the parents during parent-teacher conferences. Students would get in trouble as well when they borrowed other students' pencils. So borrowing, it's such an American word. It is a borrowed word. If a student was borrowing another student's pencil or pen, they wouldn't return it, because the idea of borrowing, because we're a community, we share. So when I borrow something from you, of course, I don't have to return it because we're sharing what we, you know, what belongs to us. And it's usually, you don't, it's the individualism versus the community. So the Marshallese culture, it's more of a community as opposed to individual. When I had decided to go to college after I had my kids, I did not get the support that I thought I would from my extended family, because that was to them, that was very selfish, because I was only thinking about myself and I wasn't thinking about the family. For me to apply to go to school, I had to leave the island. So I think that was the mentality, the state of mind that my extended family thought of me as being selfish, is I'm leaving them and venturing off with something that the family did not know, but I was the sole you know, person planning and planning, and then finally I was the only one that went. So you know, it's a lot of community togetherness. Body language, facial expression, these are huge as well when you think about children, working with children, because of the idea that you're supposed to be quiet in the presence of adults, that children will answer with their eyebrows, answer with their heads, with their face, with their body. And that's another topic that would come up, because teachers facing the wall, the blackboard, and they're back to the children, but they're not seeing that they're actually responding by using their body language and facial expressions. Next slide, please.
We had a question in the chat actually,
Okay.
asking if these extend to the career choices as well.
Yes. You know, I forgot to put time on this slide as well. I've modified this slide to fit the audiences that I've been doing a presentation to. So time is something that I know even in Hawaii, there's this thing called island time. I think with this trauma-informed practices, we're going back to that because it's more about the relationship. You have to get to know the children, whatever agency you're in. You have to get to know the children. You have to get to know the client in order to really provide that support. And all of these things that I mentioned, it doesn't just apply to students, it also applies to adults in the workplace. I hope that answered the question.
Partially, you had mentioned earlier, that obedience, kind of doing what you're told, is so important. And so I was curious how that's flavored the relationship between kind of Marshallese culture, the acculturation with kind of Western American Euro culture, with our super strong ideas of like independence, and you pick your own career and you have your own dreams and you follow those. Like, what kind of tension is there between those two kind of ideas?
Thank you. That's a good question. I think that's why in the canneries here in Oregon, a lot of the Marshallese, they work in the canneries. Like if you see those packaged lunches where you just put in the microwave, there's canneries like that here, and they can vegetables, fruits. They're in companies that package chips, potato chips, all that stuff. And so people will go to, even the students that graduate from the Salem-Keizer Public Schools, they have the education, but there's this, they will go where there's already Marshallese people working there. I've been trying to recruit my previous students to come work in the school district or even in the hospital, government agencies. But there's that sense of belonging because there's so many of people that look like them, speak like them, think like them. They can have that support system even in the workplace. If my car's not working and there's somebody working in my shift, I can always call that person and rely on that person to give me that ride. You won't see a lot of other Marshallese in like administration offices. It's that sense of belonging. Having that sense of belonging, that you'll be comfortable. And so there may be options of careers, but it's really what is that syndrome where you question yourself, like, oh, do I even qualify? I've done that.
Insecurity.
Like imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome. Thank you. Imposter syndrome, where a position will open up and it requires a master's degree and a doctorate, which I don't have, but all the experiences I have, and I start to question, like, I don't think I'll qualify because I don't have a doctorate or I don't have a master's. And then my colleagues are telling my white colleagues are telling me, like, are you kidding me? There's people that will apply because they think, but you don't learn a lot of these cultural nuances in the schools or at the universities. They don't teach you how to be empathetic. They don't teach you, all these little things that you grew up with. And I'm not talking just about me. I'm talking like each individual growing up in their own culture. You don't learn about those things in the classroom. I hope I answered your question, Dr. Coles.
We actually got another question in the chat from Keala. They said that they are a DOE school social worker, and they're trying to help support a family that recently and unexpectedly lost the dad. What do you suggest? What should they understand before trying to find outside supports? And what's the best way to offer school level support for the family?
Good question. For death, that is a very tricky one. You know, and it would, is this a Marshallese family? Keala?
Yes.
Okay.
Marshallese.
If there's already an established trusting relationship between the school, a staff at the DOE school social worker or institute that you're in, if there's already an established trusting relationship, you build on that. But if there's not, it's really, I can't really speak, you know, give you a definite answer because people mourn differently. The Marshallese way, when somebody passes away, there's going to be a wake, there's going to be a funeral, and it's so expensive. Funerals here in the mainland. In the island, you don't pay 9,000 minimum to bury somebody. You just ask permission to use land to bury your loved ones. So this is another culture shock that families experience because they come and even insurance, you don't, it's so foreign. Life insurance is a foreign concept because we don't, again, we don't pay life insurance to prepare for death. And so I would, with any relationship that has already been established, or just reaching out to the family. And it's really, that's the other thing, the communication style. You don't email, you don't call, you show up in person. If you know when they're having the wake or the funeral, you just show up and you bring food. Normally people need food, coffee, to feed people that are visiting during the wake, during the funeral, and during the life celebration. I can give you my contact information and we can talk about that on the side, Keala. Is that okay?
Thank you. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that. Can I ask, I have your attention. Can I ask one more? As a school social worker, I deal with attendance quite a bit, and that's a bit of a struggle. Do you have any suggestions regarding how to support a family to have more consistent attendance?
So you're probably not gonna like what I'm gonna tell you, but you need to start building a relationship with that family. You need to find who's the spokesperson for the family, or even just get to know the student. Oftentimes, you know, when there's a disconnect, when attendance is an issue, there's a disconnect. So you need to get to know the family, get to know the student. What are their needs? Once you start, when they see that you're there, not with a hidden agenda, like, you know, I work with the schools, you know, we need to get those numbers up. In terms of attendance, we need to get the attendance absenteeism down. But when you come because you have an agenda, it's your work. You have to make sure they're in school. You're not going to get that welcoming reception. But when you come and you genuinely want to know what's happening, how come you're, you know, is there anything that's keeping you from coming to school? And if there's really isn't, you need to connect with the adults in the family, because a lot of the time students might come to school, but again, they have to look to the adults for approval. Just this morning, I was sitting at one of the schools, high schools, and these students came late, and I said, why are you guys late? And they're like, well, we had to stay up cleaning crabs. Some of the family members visited. There was a birthday party this past weekend, and families came from Hawaii and from other states, and they went to the coast. It's a 2-hour drive to the coast. They went to the coast to go crabbing, and when they came, it's like midnight, and the students stayed up late cleaning the crabs, and had to, you know, continue this morning when they woke up, and that's why they were late. So it's really, when you really want to work with a student because of chronic attendance, you have to connect with that family and establish a trusting relationship.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're at like the 10-minute mark, but we have
Okay.
a few more questions in chat.
Okay.
After this, there is going to be like a long break. So if anything, if people have more questions after
Okay.
and they want to just talk to you directly, we can also use that time.
All right. And okay. And I think we have a few more slides. So if you could just hold off a little bit on your
Okay.
questions, and I can finish the slides, and hopefully we'll have time for Q&A, more Q&A.
Okay.
So what, when students are coming, or, like the agencies, the DHS, and this is what you see, like a chronic attendance. Okay. You don't see what's underneath all of this that the student brings, but they have so much to offer, and they have so much to bring to, wherever they're at. You just need to work on that trusting relationship to bring these things out. I listed a lot of the things that are common in the Marshallese culture. Religion is important, our beliefs, identity, storytelling. These are some of the things that your client, your student, whatever the title of the families you're working with, they bring all of these, but you have to figure out how to connect so that you can get to understand whatever situation they're in. Next slide, please. So from personal experiences, and Kelsey, how many more slides do we have? Is it 2 more?
I believe so. A few more.
Okay. So I'm just going to share maybe one story from my experiences in Hawaii and in Oregon. When I was in Hawaii going to school, I was poor. I was a single, I had 2 boys that I dragged with me. And, I had to apply for state assistance. And my caseworker, she was really mean to me at the beginning. She was like, how did you hear about this? Why are you applying? And I said, well, I'm in school, and I didn't even realize that it takes a lot financially. But, as we got to know each other, she would, in Hawaii, I don't know if it's still the same, but back then when you were on food stamps, you had 7 days to get your monthly report in before the 7th, which whatever, if it falls on a business day. But our relationship got to a point where she would, because I was so busy with school and being a mom, and like tomorrow would be the last business day of the month. The monthly report was already due on the 7th. She would call me, Kathleen, okay, you forgot to turn in your monthly report. Do you have any changes? And I said, no. She's like, where are you at? Are you at the school, or where you? Because I used to live in Pepekeo. So she'd be like, are you at the school? And I'd be like, I'm at home. Can you drive down here before 5 o'clock? And I said, okay. So she would bend the rules, sort of, because we've already established, she knew me, I knew her. She knew that I wasn't, just out to drain the system, but I was working on my education. So that's why building that trusting relationship is so important, because when you get to know the individual, and you realize that there's certain things you might find out that you didn't know that might give you new perspective of that person. Now in Oregon, I've been working with the school district. This is my 21st year working as an educator. I was a community school outreach coordinator for 18 years. And this is my second year in my current position, community resource specialist for Pacific Islander students. Prior, I was the community school outreach coordinator for Marshallese students that are English learners. And so my community school outreach coordinator position was, it was created because there was a big fight between the Marshallese boys and the local boys here. But when I first started, so I was an instructional assistant 2 years before that position was open, and I saw chronic attendance. big disconnection. Families were not connected to the schools. Students were dropping out. You know, if there were 12 students, senior Marshallese student that year, only one will graduate and the rest of them will not graduate, and they would get dropped. And, you know, families did not know how to navigate the system. They had nobody in the system. So when that big fight broke out, they had somehow worked with a few teachers that were helping them to navigate the system. So when there were like probably 9 male Marshallese students that were expelled because of that big fight, they were all over the media. The families sort of organized and went to the director that was the person that was the director for the K-12 ESOL program for English learners. They went and they demanded that she open the community school outreach coordinator position for Marshallese students, because they were opening up a position for the Spanish speaking students and the Russian speaking students. But the Marshallese community, the population was growing. And so they were the 3rd largest population of English learner students in the district. So that's how my previous position came to be, because the families demanded that they have, because there was so much disconnection and nobody was working with the families, with the students. And now, you know, even with the pandemic, it just sort of like put a spotlight on the barriers, the inequities that the Pacific Islanders are facing. And, you know, now we have so many people that they've hired to work with our Pacific Islander students, not just, you know, people that speak the languages, but teachers, you know, programs have expanded that serve not just the Marshallese students, but, you know, other students from marginalized and underserved communities. How are we with time?
We have 2 minutes,
2
but
minutes.
there is a long break after this. So if people want to stay on and chat with you, that is fine as well. I'll just stop the recording if that's okay.
You can go to the next, I think it's the last one with the tree again. So when you have that established trusting relationship, you get to see that individuals have personal ambition. They have fear of failure. They have anger and shame, limitless patience, selfishness and selflessness, astonishing generosity, deep gratitude, not exotic, with no egos, and everything else in between. Thank you for coming to this workshop.
I'm going to stop the recording now. If there are those who want to stay on and chat some more, you're free to do that. After this, there is, I believe, a 45-minute break. And after that, we'll do the next round of sessions.